In the aftermath of the crash of Air India 171, every day brings sorrowful headlines of funerals and heartbroken families, families that will remain frozen in time as the news moves on. The latest images of devastation and grief that we have seen are from Mumbai as families bid farewell to Captain Clive Kunder, the co pilot of the ill fated plane. We now know that Captain Sumeet Sabarwal and Captain Clive Kunder, till the very end of their 32-second journey, tried to save lives both in the air and on the ground. But even as families, their comrades, their friends, and in fact the whole country copes with this moment of grief. There you can see Captain Clive's mother, unable to let go of his coffin, the coffin plastered with a smiling photograph of Captain Clive in his uniform. These are men who died and lived for the uniform. The focus is now shifting to the investigation. Media reports suggested at first that one of the black boxes, remember this plane has two, that one of the damaged black boxes recovered from the debris of AI 171 would be sent to the United States of America for analysis. However, the government has said that no decision on this has yet been taken. Those media reports created somewhat of a controversy because remember, United States is where, of course, Boeing is headquartered. Boeing is the manufacturer of 787 Dreamliner as well as GE that makes the engines on this plane. Many aviation experts felt that if India can't analyze the data, then it should be sent to quote unquote a nuclear country. But the government has said that no such decision has been taken. Meanwhile, there are wider conversations that are taking place about the impact of this entire situation on the mental health and the fortitude of pilots, cabin crew, and not just within Air India, but especially within Air India, at a time when a section of the media and social commentary has been so vicious, so vile, so cruel, that it has in fact been lacking completely in humanity and empathy. Questions must be asked, but the alacrity with which some sought to blame the pilots is nothing short of disgusting. Let's bring in one of India's foremost aviation experts now. Captain Sam Thomas is with us. Captain Thomas is also the president of the Airlines Pilots Association of India. So he represents really a large number of voices when he speaks here, speaks for the community, speaks for men and women who can't necessarily at this moment speak for themselves. Captain Thomas, welcome to the program. It is such a tragedy. I think I must start by expressing my condolences each day, every day to the aviation community at large, and in particular to Air India. Let me start by actually asking you. It's been a few days. We've had some time to recover our thoughts, to still our emotions. What do we know at this point, and what do we not know?
Good evening, ma'am. The first thing is, on behalf of the Airline Pilots Association of India, we'd like to deeply, deeply thank you for having paid tribute to the crew, particularly Sumit and Clive.
Thank
They've
you.
been they've been at the receiving end of the media glare for the wrong reasons, and we'd like to start off by thanking you personally and on behalf of the Airline Pilots Association of India.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And just if you can allow me a couple of sentences, Sumit belongs to our vintage. And the first information that came out that shocked us was he had only 8,400 hours, which was far from the truth. All of us finished our 10,000 hours at least 10 years back. That was one. And sometimes pilots tend to have an air about themselves inadvertently. But Sumit was not like that. Sumit was a perfect gentleman and a very, very competent pilot. And we will sorely miss him. And amongst us, we wish there was time to tell him how good a pilot he was, but he'll be remembered most for being an expert in imitating Dev Anand. We'll miss you, brother.
Oh,
As
really?
far as
Share that story. And Sumit had this smiling face. I didn't know him, but the photographs I've been seeing of him, just this ever smiling sort of gentleman. And as you said, perfect gentleman. And I was really moved by his framed photograph being placed, his smiling photograph in his uniform being placed on his casket. Talk a little bit about this man who loved to imitate Devanand. I think people must also see the human side of Sumit and Clive. when they've been so
Absolutely.
unfairly vilified by some of the media.
Very, very true, ma'am. What you see in the photograph is exactly what Sumit was, ever smiling, and he operated airplanes very diligently. And in our circles, there were two people who basically, um, in our free time, like to do certain things that do not belong to the realm of flying.
Yeah,
And I remember Sumit as somebody who could really imitate Devanand. I wish I could do it, but then Sumit was
yeah,
Sumit, and that's what I remember him for. Now, as far as Clive is concerned, I didn't know Clive personally, but ma'am,
mhm,
what you have to understand is Clive is the quintessential new generation pilot, model looks, bodybuilder physique, and let
yeah,
me tell you, these kids are so good with technology. We old men are so much dependent on them. And I can tell you for sure, these are the kids that are saving us now when there is a GPS spoofing or anything like that, because
yeah.
they have the iPads, they have the gizmos, and they are very, very good. I don't know how I can pay tribute to somebody whose life is cut short. These visuals are showing that. And
Yeah.
once again, ma'am, thank you for paying tribute to them.
No, in fact, I just want to say to you that you don't have to thank me. I have been so disturbed at seeing how sections of my own fraternity have reported on this story, the airtime, the almost immediate platforming, Captain Thomas, that was given to people who sought to smear these pilots, who had 32 seconds and actually in flying terms, or 10 to 15 seconds to make an intervention. And when we look at the CCTV footage and we see the way the nose is tilting, we know now that the condition in which uh, Captain Sumeet's body was found shows that till the very end, all he was trying to do was to somehow save his passengers, his plane, as well as lives on the ground. I'm just wondering, as a pilot representing also the Pilots Association, when you saw the kind of cruel commentary on some channels, in some sections of social media, how did you personally feel? How did the fraternity take it? Because it's been so god awful, some of the commentary.
And angry is what we felt at that time. And let me tell you that it was one American TikToker that set off this
That's
entire
right.
frenzy. And we don't want to blame him completely. Everybody is entitled to earn their bread within the confines of their intellect. What we were saying is that how the media lapped it up,
Yeah.
and we would not have gone behind him had he not touched the pilots. Now, that is the time we wrote to the FAA, we wrote to his employer, and that is the
Yeah.
reason why you see a complete 180-degree turn from them, and he has paid tribute to the Indian pilots by saying that they know English. Wow. So that is one thing. And it's okay. It's okay. Like we said, foolishness is not confined to geographical boundaries. So that's fine with us. Now,
But you know,
what
I want to know. I didn't know actually that you'd written to the FAA and complained about Captain Steve. Can you share a little bit more about that?
we see our international organization is headquartered in Montreal, and
Mm-hmm.
in air accident investigation, the first thing is you do not speculate, because we've been through so many accidents and their ensuing investigations that whatever we, even as experienced pilot, think or arrive at a conclusion which we can't avoid, invariably we are wrong. Invariably we are wrong. A lot of things. That's the time when you have people walking around just not even having seen the picture of a 787 commenting on it. Now we
Mm-hmm.
even went after the Steves of India. So what we have done in the Airline Pilots Association, we'll be coming out with it. We've recorded all the clips of the so-called experts, and we are putting it on a podcast. We'll be bringing that up slowly, and we will show you how these speculations, irrespective of the designations of the people, some of them are veterans, some of them claim to be veterans. One gentleman
Yeah.
who screams the most only has 380 hours total time. I'm amazed. What was he doing in the Indian Air Force for 380 hours? I don't know. But then he's entitled to his opinion. Only thing we request is, still the investigation is out, don't throw the pilots under the bus.
Yeah, absolutely. I so agree with you, and and also I just on Captain Steve. Uh, okay, he did what he did, but you could tell by the way that he was wearing his uniform. He was doing an act. He was almost being like an actor. The more disturbing part is our TV channels, our TV hosts who gave him unquestioned space, who did not shut him down. But then his own credibility is exposed when the next day he takes back what he said. But even then, he's being patronizing. Like you're saying, he's surprised that Indian pilots can speak English. I mean, where does he come from?
Now, now I don't know what to tell. There are a lot of people like him. Steve came out as one of these, TikTokers who has a lot of following, but he is castigated amongst his community as well. So
Hmm.
we've done all what we can, and that's one of the reasons why he went back. But then you see, in America, you have this First Amendment right where you can say what you want. It's not
Yeah,
like India where if somebody gets offended, they can go home and sulk about it, do nothing about it.
yeah,
So we said it's
yeah,
okay. We'll come out on channels and try to dispel some of the myths that are going around. And we'd also like to point out to the fact that don't write India off. You
yeah,
can't decode a black box,
yeah,
which is a hard disk. I do it
yeah.
every week. So,
Hmm.
you know, I understand that it's a little bit damaged, and I don't know who has. See, this narrative is being set. That's what we are
Hmm.
objecting to. We want transparency, and that's what we are fighting about. That's all.
Let's come to the black box. With again reiterating that one, without being an aviation expert, I was very disturbed as an Indian to see the vilification of our pilots. Very disturbed at sections of my own community, and the smiling faces of Captains Sumeet and Captain Clive fill me with waves of sadness. And I think I speak for millions of Indians in paying tribute to their sacrifice and to their trying in the few seconds that they had to save lives and paying with their own lives in the end. This is what people forget when they make such armchair sweeping generalizations about pilots. Th- I want to move to the black box. You said, why can't we analyze the data here? Now, please explain to our audience first that this plane has two black boxes, not one black box, but two black boxes, right? One of them is damaged, and some newspapers reported that that damaged black box was going to be sent to the United States of America, which is also the headquarters of Boeing and GE. Others then said this is a conflict of interest. Even if it has to go out of India, why isn't it going to a neutral country, not the country not the country where the company that manufactures these planes is located? How do you see this entire controversy? Since then, the government has said we are yet to decide where this damaged black box will be analyzed. Now, what are the concerns here? What's at stake? Uh, are the two black boxes identical? My understanding as a layperson is they are identical. Talk about this issue.
Now, first of all, yes, there is a unit in the front of the airplane, particularly the 787, but the
Mhm.
main black box, that's two components of that. One is the cockpit voice recorder, and the other is the digital flight data recorder.
Yeah.
Now, it's located in the tail section. As a layperson, you can see that the tail section is the least damaged. And so we are appalled at the narrative that is being set. It's not for the first
Mhm.
time that the cockpit voice recorder or the DFDR is damaged, and now we need to take it to some other place. And who's going to take it
Mhm.
there? It's the NTSB that is going to take it there. May I just point your attention to last year, we inaugurated a state of the art DFDR reading facility in Delhi.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now, 6 months down the line, we are saying that no, actually, it's damaged, and therefore we need to send it to the United States. Now, they may do a fantastic job of decoding the DFDR, but we've been doing this for the last so many years.
Yeah.
Why is it that now it is going out, and who is accompanying it? Suppose you have decided to send it out, who are the competent people who are going to accompany it? Because we have seen that when you send a bureaucrat, what happens there is an absolute travesty of justice, wherein you'll get a limo when you go there. They will send you a
Mm-hmm.
limo and they will send you on a shopping spree and then bring you back and hand over the results to you.
Hmm.
Now, you don't know, since you're not a subject matter expert, you don't know whether they're giving you the right sort of decoded data. How was it decoded? So these are the kind of questions that we have, and we've been shouting on rooftops to say, hey, look, take us along. We will not open our mouth. Just keep us there as an observer. That's all we are asking for. So that in the interest of transparency, no more conspiracy theories come out.
So you are concerned that this investigation could be helmed and taken over by bureaucrats who are not technical experts. You are concerned that the very sort of state of the art facility inaugurated recently, if I'm not wrong, by the aviation minister himself, is not, may not be. Government is now saying we haven't decided, so may not be used. And if indeed this DFDR is sent to the United States of America, you're saying it can't be bureaucrats traveling with it, or it can't be bureaucrats alone. It has to be bureaucrats plus technical experts. Some people have also pointed out that the inquiry panel does not have enough experts. The inquiry panel that has been announced, and I'm actually a little confused. Who all is going to investigate this crash? Is it the inquiry panel? Is it the Safety Board of India? What is the difference between the two? If it goes to the United States of America, do they take over the investigation or do they decode the data, send it back? Who's keeping an eye on that when there's a clear possible conflict of interest? Captain Thomas.
Very, very pertinent points. Now, the Air Accident Investigation Bureau, or the AAIB, is in charge
Yeah.
of investigating this particular accident. Let me tell you that as we speak, they have still not constituted at least we are not in the knowledge of people who have been selected to head this investigation. Now, more often than not, this is a rehabilitation center for retired Air Force officers. They just come there. If you notice the Mangalore crash,
Yeah.
we have on record that after all the investigation that was done and the pilots blamed, the wife of the captain was paid 4.5 crores by the relevant parties just to not proceed further legally against the entity that investigated the issue. So what we are saying is the investigators who end up with the AAIB, firstly, it's not an independent body. And the investigators who end up do not match the criteria set by AAIB alone. So then that's one. The other thing is there is a protocol that you involve the state of the manufacturer of the aircraft. Now, so yes, we invite NTSB, we invite Boeing, but we don't allow them to do anything other than see what we are doing. That would be the perfect way to go forward. And India, trust me, we have competent talent to take care of investigations like this. But now,
But how does this work? How do you invite the NTSB and the Boeing and not allow them access to the data? What will they come and do?
no, you allow them access to the data. You give them
Yeah,
everything. They will be observers. They will be passive,
I
sort
see.
of, that you share the data. There's no problem at all. You share the
Yeah,
data with them, and
yeah,
but you are the lead investigator, and you will do how, and you cross check with them, and that's how
yeah.
they take it, because these investigations are not done for apportioning blame on anybody. This is done primarily to see that this doesn't repeat itself ever again. That's how air crash investigation is done. Unfortunately, in India, we love punishing the people, whoever that is. So you will punish the airline first, then you will get hold of the pilots. If they are alive, that's it. So
Yeah.
nowadays, ma'am, if I can draw your attention to one of the incidents that happened in Air India,
Yeah.
where a passenger allegedly urinated on a lady. There was no witness. Nobody knew what happened, what transpired, but the pilots were suspended.
I didn't
So,
know that. I didn't know the
yes,
pilots were
absolutely.
suspended.
First thing they do is suspend the pilot. So there are three F's that the Indian
How
pilots
how
operate.
how are the pilots? Even if that case in itself became quite dodgy and questionable as time went along, but even if a passenger has misbehaved, how are the pilots responsible for that?
That's the law. You see, a great man called Lord Macaulay in 1860 wrote these laws, and we are governed by Indian Aircraft Act 1934. So there is a car section 5 in which reportable accidents. So these laws are made in such a way that they look like the sedition law of India to be a very juvenile law. So somehow this is the way the pilots are subjected to the three F's. One is fear, the other is fatigue, third is fines. We pay fines now for any of the mistakes that they think we made, and it's not uniform. Imagine if you were to be living in an affluent part of the city, you are fined more than a person for the same offense is done who does not live in the affluent part of the city. So this in itself is illegal under law. But then
Yeah.
the pilots are stuck. They can't do anything. So we are trying to make a movement to see that at least we lead a normal life as a citizen. We are human too. This is what we want to highlight.
I think that's what's been forgotten in this crash by some people, not by everybody. I think there is also an overwhelming surge of sadness, empathy, emotion, respect for the pilots of AI 171 and the community at large. But there's another competing narrative which has just treated this tragedy to be of a machine and has forgotten the men who were flying it, and it just really makes me so angry and so upset. But I had technical questions about the crash, but I want to stay with the point you made about pilots for a moment. Firstly, I'm shocked to discover that in the alleged P-gate case, nobody even knows what happened to that case. It's in court. The pilots were suspended. Why were they suspended? You say there are three F's that are used to punish pilots: fear, fatigue, and fines. I want you to talk a little bit about the PTSD, the post-traumatic stress disorder that pilots maybe across the world, across the industry, but particularly within Air India, might be feeling at this point when they're under the scrutiny of the whole world, scrutiny of a very unforgiving public. I said the other day, if God forbid you lost somebody you loved in a car accident, would you be able to get back on the road and drive again without a pause? So I'm not saying there aren't management issues, there aren't questions to be asked, but can we talk a little bit about what pilots of Air India and pilots at large might be going through at this moment? And cabin crew. I would also like to mention very specifically cabin crew, some of the heartbreaking images that we have got. We're seeing the P-gate headlines. By the way, just want to read this out. DGCA rejects plea to revoke suspension of pilot's license. I didn't know he'd lost his license. My
That's
God,
yes,
that's
and there's no
crazy.
representation of there's no
That's
representation allowed for pilots to argue their case. It's just a babu who decides that yes, it has come out in the media, so I need to suspend you. Please keep quiet. You open your mouth, I'll make it 6 months. You quietly sit here, and I'll let you go. So that's a fact, and you
crazy.
must know that the judicial process is taken as a punishment for us, because when we don't fly, we lose our currency, we
Yeah.
lose our sort of our license is de facto nullified, because if you don't fly for 6 months, then you need to do a lot of training to get back into fly. And for what reason? First thing they do is a couple of pilots went through turbulence in Indigo,
Mhm.
and they did a fantastic job. Nobody spoke about that. And here's the dichotomy: uh,
Hmm.
the same country that gives awards to the military pilots when they do a good job does not even make a mention of the civilian pilots who does a very good job when he gets the airplane back. We as an association felicitated two pilots who did a brilliant job while bringing back an aircraft that had an engine fire. So that was the first time in India somebody was doing that. So that's the dichotomy that we face.
I think that's a
And
great. I think that's a great point. You know, you have a Captain Sully in America on whom an entire movie is made. There are everyday Captain Sullys in India who are never celebrated.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
And as
yeah,
far as the post-traumatic stress disorder
yeah,
is concerned,
yeah.
irrespective of which airline has a crash, all the pilots go through the same kind of it. We may have a stern face when we get onto that uniform. We know we are trained that once we switch on everything in the aircraft, we switch off from whatever feelings that we have. That's the way the training goes, and that's how we deal with the situation. But it's at the back of our mind. The moment we put the autopilot on and we reach cruise level, invariably at this time, the conversation is what could have happened. And so sad that, somebody that, and it's a close knit community. We don't have very many pilots, particularly the Jet Airways and the Air India. We were two sort of on paper rivals, but we all met up at the pub in London. So
Mm,
it was something that it's difficult to explain. And
yeah.
yeah, I really don't know how I can explain that. And the state of Sumit's father, I simply
Yeah.
cannot fathom what he's going through. And many of us didn't have the guts to go to his funeral. That is the fact.
What do you mean? You were too. You didn't want to feel that complete devastation of emotion in your heart.
Correct, correct. And we've seen it before, but as brave as we claim to be, we sent some of our members. We might have made, of course, we had flying commitments that was different, but I personally did not have the courage to go and face his parents, his father, basically.
So, you know, we are now hearing reports. There has been a pilot who actually took the flight back from takeoff point because he had a panic attack. Understandable, completely understandable. I do not for a moment judge him. There are cabin crew members who are saying, no, we're not feeling okay. The people manning the Air India helplines are reported to have had breakdowns because the families were calling them and sharing their grief. At this moment, Air India has chosen, I think, wisely to cut 15% of its flights, wide body routes, so that it can streamline its systems. But there are questions around whether that's enough to give a kind of pause that maybe the community needs, or does it just like it's a very difficult choice for an airliner to make, right? What would you do in their place?
No, ma'am. Firstly, we should identify that there are three reasons why these flights are getting cancelled, and it's not
Yeah,
entirely in Air India's sort of control. One is the DGCA
absolutely.
has ordered additional checks on the 787s. Now, these have to be pulled offline to get these checks completed. Two
Mhm.
is the Iran airspace is filled with excitement right now.
That's right.
And most civilized countries don't allow you to come into their airspace at night, particularly for landing and takeoff. So
Yeah.
these are the three reasons that happen. Are you saying that there should be things done more? Absolutely, absolutely. But the business of airline is such that, and you also have to look at the enormity of the exercise that Tatas have in their hand. I don't know if they have the expertise to handle, and nowhere in the world would you find expertise to handle 5 airlines. See, integrating the machine is difficult, but integrating the people is a very big issue. And now that is having a lot of problems because the way they're going, uh, doing that exercise, which Air India and Indian Airlines tried when they tried to do the merger, is not exactly the way it's going to get you the desired results. It is just that a systemic change needs to happen. And I hope this, despite being the greatest of price we had to pay, I hope it brings a good of a complete systemic change. The DGC, Air India, the courts, everything must change.
Yeah, I want to get to what must change, but just when you're talking about the Tatas, the merger that many thought was a terrible idea of Indian Airlines and Air India. That was under Praful Patel when he was the aviation minister. And Mr. Patel, though, recently raised an interesting question, I thought, about Singapore Airlines. Singapore Airlines being a co-stakeholder in this company, being absolutely silent. We haven't heard anything from them at all. We're all talking about Tata's Air India. Where is Singapore Airlines in this discussion? How do you see that question?
Ma'am, it's like now it's gone to a point where there's a mob frenzy. If you do, you're damned. If you don't, you're damned.
Yeah.
So if Singapore Airlines were to come in and give a statement here, people are going to latch on to that and say that in our circles, it is, the moment you bring in Singapore Airlines, now Singapore as a society is a very compliant society. It's a small state, not even as big as Bangalore. India, on the other hand, have a lot of cultural differences. So you cannot bring a manager from Singapore because in the 1960s he had done something phenomenal and he can implement that in India. The diversity in India is so much just in the aviation sector that on a day, if you take off from Srinagar, you would be at -2 and land at Jodhpur at 42 and then come on a rainy track to Madurai. So, the differences are so many, and one size fits all solution doesn't work. And it's human resources nightmare. And I don't know how they're going to solve it. We've had some kind of solutions, but then they don't talk to anybody. And right now it appears to be some kind of power struggle between the human resources department and the pilots and the cabin crew as well. You very rightly pointed out, in this whole exercise, we somehow missed the cabin crew. So it was very nice of you to have brought out their state. Poor people are not even heard. They don't have any representation, and they work the hardest.
Yeah. And honestly, having been on many Air India flights, I want to take this opportunity to say, Captain Thomas, that Air India cabin crew is amongst the kindest and warmest in the world. And you are seeing, I think, that's Captain Sumeet's funeral, but we also have funeral images from some of the funerals that have taken place in Mumbai of cabin crew from as far as Manipur to Mumbai. Always very diverse representation on Air India flights. But I want to share a little story. On the day after the crash, I was actually in New York the day the crash happened, and I covered the crash, and then I had to take a flight from the Newark to New Delhi flight. And because of the Iran-Israel situation, the airspace closes over Iran. We are diverted to Vienna. And we are in the aircraft in Vienna for about 6 hours. And this is right after, it's the morning after the crash. It hasn't even been maybe 7, 8, 10 hours since the crash or 5 hours since the crash. Extreme professionalism, still a smile on the face of the cabin crew. God knows what they were feeling. They all had friends who had perished in that crash. The pilot was beyond his duty hours. He had to take dispensation. Otherwise, everybody would have had to stay the night in Vienna from DGCA to fly us back. So everybody who so callously comments on pilots and cabin crew, they're the same people who will take borderline racism on other Western airlines be spoken badly to and not even open their mouth, So there is this kind of colonial hangover that I just wanted to call out. I want to ask you, this power struggle between HR and pilots and cabin crew, like how does this resolve at this point? For Air India as a brand, keeping pilots and cabin crew safe, because keeping them safe means keeping passengers safe, but also, of course, Air India to keep functioning as the brand that it is and it hopes to be?
I am an eternal optimist. I believe that this Air India will come back in such a manner that we'll be very proud of it someday, but there is a lot of work to be done before we can say that. As far as the cabin crew and the pilots, ma'am, I have to tell you, the pilots are fatigued when they are given this extended flight duty time limitations. So we've been pointing that out, but at the same time, we miss out that the cabin crew, which work the hardest, and they will always, you're very right. I came on that Newark, New Delhi flight last month, and exact same things happened. You should have seen the way the cabin crew went out of the way to keep the passengers sort of satisfied. Great. It's really hats off to all of them. But as far as the flight duty time limitations are concerned, we have been demanding that it be done on a scientific basis, not on the basis of something that whims and fancies of certain people. So now most of the authorities lack the expertise in forming this flight duty time limitations. NASA is the ultimate authority that has come out with a lot of FRMs, fatigue risk management studies. So these are not implemented, we believe, due to lobbying by certain airlines. Now, there's a contradiction there as well. The Honorable Civil Aviation Minister in Parliament says, hey, we have a lot of pilots and, in fact, excess of pilots. Then how do you go about taking these exemptions?
Right.
Some of our laws, like I pointed out earlier, are written to the point of failure. So you need to take the permission of somebody. So you still go to that license permit Raj. So you will have a bureaucrat whose permission you need, and maybe he will give it to you for considerations other than merit.
Yeah, as you said, many of the issues are deeply systemic. I want to end with a couple of questions about the crash and the aircraft. So let's start with the aircraft. Some people may want to sort of, just single out Air India. But the fact is that there are 1,200 787 Dreamliners deployed worldwide. And yesterday, I had a message from a passenger whom I don't know, who was taking an Air Tanzania flight, which he said was a Dreamliner. And he said that the flight had been delayed by 4 or 5 hours. There seemed to be, quote unquote, a technical glitch. And they didn't know what it was, but there was a technical glitch, and they were all then taken off the plane, placed in the coach, taken back to terminal. There are also now pilots who have begun to share previous incidents involving the Dreamliner, right? Something that took place in 2019 in Japan. I don't remember the details, but if we can pull it up, that would be great. And they're comparing it with what happened with Boeing and the 737 MAX, where Boeing actually had to go back to the drawing board and fix the problems. So let me first ask you about the Dreamliner as an aircraft. The fact is that there are 1,200 of them deployed, right?
Yes.
There are people who believe that the stakes are just too high for the aviation industry for anybody to honestly assess the. And again, I don't want to fearmonger. I don't want to create an alarm. I am taking a flight by Air India to London tonight. So this is not about the fear of flying. Flying remains the safest mode of transport. I am caveating all of this to ask the question I want to. Does Boeing need to go back to the drawing board on the Dreamliner, or would that just be sheer panic at this point without the black boxes being decoded?
No, I don't believe they need to go back to the drawing board. They need to
Well,
go back.
what I mean is that do they need to issue any emergency directives? That's actually what I mean. Yeah.
And too early for that as well. Now, what they need to go back and find out is their running of the Boeing company. That, you see, over time, it has become profitable post the merger or the takeover by McDonnell Douglas. It has been a more commercially driven operation. Boeing was one of the greatest airplane manufacturers ever. And some of their whistleblowers have come out with certain unconfirmed reports. Now, as far as the Boeing 737 MAXs are concerned, they've been taken to the cleaners by their own Congress. Now, that was a shoddy job done. That was the first time where the first crash happened in Lion Air, and they blamed the pilots squarely on that. And
just for context, we have a newspaper report here that says that US, Japan, and China account for 40% of Boeing Dreamliners. India, in fact, ranks 9th in the total delivery. So I'm just reading this out to say that, like, before everybody makes this about Air India, this aircraft is everywhere. This particular aircraft is one of the most popular aircraft in the world. Now, do go ahead and make your point about Boeing. Yeah, go ahead.
So when the 737 Maxes crashed, they did not even bother to sort of do a thorough investigation and said that the pilots just didn't know how to fly it.
Yeah.
Thereafter, if that error was committed, what Boeing did was committed in India, trust me, that entire company would be in jail for the rest of their lives. So they did a mega cover up
Hmm.
and they introduced a system into the airplane called the MCAS and didn't bother to tell the pilots about it. And
Yeah.
that's not the greatest of systems. Now, when you go through what is in the public domain, and we know it as well, I've flown the 737s and the 777s. So that is the reason why we say that let's forget that anything has happened with respect to whatever the Maxes had to do. Let's, at
Yeah.
least in the interest of transparency, not be speaking the same language 6 months from now. So, as far as the Boeing Dreamliner is concerned, very good airplane. It's just that it's high on electrics.
Hmm.
So, now by nature, a lot of these airplanes in aviation have technical difficulties, and you get into a cautious mode when an incident happens world over. It's not like it's happening not that the Dreamliner is taken back to the bay only in India. It's happening with British Airways, it's happening with Japan, it's happening all over the places. Some it's just that you're getting to know of it in the aftermath of this accident.
Yeah. So in that case, my question simply is, what should happen to the Dreamliner at this point? Does Boeing, or is that a premature question till the initial reading of the black box, the DFDR, is done?
The DFDR, in conjunction with the CVR, in
Mhm.
conjunction with the ATC transcripts and
Yes.
all data available, will be correlated, and only then can they come up with a definitive answer. And in that definitive answer, if there is something that is deficient in the 787, they will ground the entire fleet and have an airworthiness directive out till it's rectified. That is a normal procedure.
But for all of that, we need more time to know exactly what happened with the I-171.
Very true. Very true.
Finally, on the crash itself, without being speculative, there seems to be a near consensus among many people that there was a dual engine flame out. Do you agree with that, or do you think we're not at a point to know that?
Uh, Ma'am, I know I've been watching all these experts, and in fact, I did see your channel as well, where a couple of them were definitively telling you that this happened. In air crash investigations, you don't do that. I know what you're
Yeah.
saying is right. Yes, there is a consensus among armchair experts. Fine, that is okay. But you never, never, ever comment before that. Anything else along with that, we can do. We cannot even dispel, as Captain Minu Wadia on your channel said, you cannot dispel anything. So by having fancy designations and talking
Yeah.
terms that civilians don't understand, it doesn't make you, you know, actually an expert. I wish people would just sit at home and watch your television channel rather than come on it and comment something that they don't know. Sorry, I said it that way.
Not at all. Not at all. I totally see the point you're making. And again, one tries to be as informed, as nuanced, as careful as possible. But, I can't control what other people think and say because I'm also not an expert. I'm only a journalist in this context. My final question to you would be that you said that there needs to be a system change, a systemic change. Where does that change need to begin, especially from the Pilots Association perspective?
Ma'am, you see, we have been highlighting the fact that safety culture is not something that you can change overnight. We, as an Indian culture, are not very adept at safety. You see the number of people who drive on the wrong side of the road with four kids on a
Yeah,
bike. And
yeah,
do you see the traffic lights where people
yeah.
are just, they don't care? So this is something that's ingrained in us. All of a sudden, because you sat in an airplane or you're in charge of an airplane, you know, pilots have no option but to be safe because it's their life as well. And The flying part of it is extremely heavy on flight safety. But the authorities who do that, now you scare me, you say you need to do this, but if you miss it, you're going to be hanged. All the time we tell you that some of the best brains in the mind are brain surgeons, or rather brain in the country are brain surgeons. When a brain surgeon makes a mistake, one person dies in a worst case scenario. But if I make a mistake, that's just about half a second.
Yeah.
I'll be jeopardizing the lives of a lot of people. So you please don't put me under extreme pressure. We are once again saying we are human, we do a good job, but if you put us under pressure of fines and fatigue and fear, we may not be able to operate at our optimum.
Absolutely. And those images that we just played before, I just wanted to clarify that those are shots of the chopper crash in Kedarnath. And let's also take a moment to talk about, the lives lost there while we are talking about the risks that are taken in everyday flying. But I just want to say that this, for me, is the closing thought, that we tend to focus on the machine and not the men and women who fly them, who are cabin crew, the other affiliated parts. It's like a multiple organ, right? You need engineers, you need people on the ground, you need commercial staff. There's so many people that come together to make a flight safe. And I think the most important thing is that for those people that you put in the cockpit, the men and the women who fly these planes, for men like Captain Sumeet and Captain Clive, they should not be worrying about saving the company fuel. They should not be worried that if they flag a safety issue in the plane that they're not comfortable with, some HR person is going to say, "Arey, this guy is very problematic. ये तो झगड़ता रहता है." This cannot be. This cannot be what pilots have to go through. So thank you for saying that. Thanks, Captain Sam. God bless. God bless. More power to all of you. I think you make an excellent point that commercial pilots, everybody hangs them when there's something goes wrong. How many times do we thank them when through weather, turbulence, volcanoes erupting, wars taking place in airspace, they bring us back home safely? There should be, I think this crash would be, if anything, the backdrop to say that pilots risk their lives, cabin crew risk their lives every day, and there should be a national way to recognize and honor those risks and those sacrifices. Thank you, Captain Sam Thomas, for talking to us, for educating us, for elucidating on so many points. We hope to reconnect with you again soon as more concrete, unspeculated, verifiable information comes in on what actually happened that took AI-17 down in 32 seconds. We leave our audience now with images. Thanks, sir. We leave our audience now with images, heartbreaking images of Captain Clive Kunder's mother. These are his funeral shots. Once again, it was his image smiling in uniform that was placed on his casket. Blue skies forever, Captain Sumeet and Captain Clive. Thank you for watching. See you soon.
For the final journey of Clive Kunder, let us join together in singing the parting hymn. There's a land that is fairer than day, and by faith we can see it afar. There's a land that is fairer than day, and by faith we can see it afar. For the Father we go on the way.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.